The A-bomb, the atomic bomb, the Fat Man, whatever you call it, this human-made explosive is enough to wipe a city into ashes and make a YouTube channel demonetized if I go further on this topic. The atomic bomb and Japan have always had this very strange relationship because of certain incidents. The question of when or if the latest hit film Oppenheimer, directed by Christopher Nolan, will still air in Japan is still unknown. While I was sitting on my gaming chair and finishing my 4th Dorito bags for the day, a question occurred to me. Was the atomic bomb also banned in anime and manga? And after some brief research, the answer is no. I mean, when you have stuff like this on anime, of course it's not gonna be banned. However, this is just not a simple yes-no question. How does anime and manga depict such a sensitive topic? Let's dive into some anime. We need to go back further.
Tell me this. Where have Alexander and Nina gone to?
Back when anime is good.
Seriously, a lot of old school anime is just straight eye candy.
Now almost all anime have the exact same art style with some bad CGI thrown in at times.
Yeah, I'm not getting into this debate. I don't care. Depictions of atomic bomb in the Japanese entertainment industry first came with the 1950s movie Children of Hiroshima. During that time, the occupation of American forces in Japan was coming to an end, and so was the heavy censorship of the atomic bomb, which was gradually lifted among Japanese media. However, Children of Hiroshima heavily focused on what happened after the bomb and only told stories of individual children. Therefore, another film called Hiroshima was released in the next year, depicting a more graphic and horrifying story of the bomb. The film carries stronger anti-bomb messages. Along with these two live-action films, the atomic bomb started to find its way and had massive influence on the manga industry from the 1950s to 1970s. Professor Ichiki calls this period the golden years of the A-bomb manga. The theme heavily dominated shoujo manga targeted for younger girls, and the best example for this would be Chieko Hosokawa's Ai no Hitomi, or Gaze of Love. A typical atomic bomb influenced shoujo manga would be like a young couple falls in love and plans to wed, only to find out the female protagonist has contracted a disease related to radiation. Such storylines originated from direct effects of the bombings, but carefully work around the historical context of the attacks. A very direct reference to the atomic bomb comes much later in the 1970s of the manga Barefoot Gen. The story originated from the author's own experiences as a Hiroshima survivor, with the series beginning at Hiroshima in 1945. The manga was fraught with problems because of its nature and content, and was effectively sidelined by mainstream publications at that time. This would be your go-to manga if you would like a personal real-life story directly linked to the Hiroshima bombings. So what about the A-bomb in anime? In the 1950s, anime was quite different to what we enjoy nowadays. The technology for animation in Japan was simply lacking, and they often came in the form of very short films of less than 10 minutes, and a lot of these anime relics before the war were long lost to history. The first anime broadcast on TV did not come through until 1958, when Most Adventure was released, but more importantly, the first major successful anime released much later in the 1960s also had major ties to the atomic bomb. Astro Boy. The main character, Astro, is a nearly perfect robot superhero who strove to become more human and emotive to serve as an interface between man and machine, which runs on nuclear energy. This peaceful use of atomic power embodies the latent utopian possibilities of the atomic age. Nuclear power used to save rather than to destroy. The manga behind the TV show was created during the start of the Cold War, when bigger and scarier hydrogen bombs, hundreds times more destructive than the ones in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, were begun to be tested by the two major powers. Apart from being a major forerunner in the anime world, Astro also brought along science and technology to the anime world, inspiring many future mecha shows. It also portrays technology as a power to be simultaneously feared and revered in modern-day Japan. The actual depiction of the atomic bomb in the anime industry comes in 1978. It is a 7-minute independent short, which shows inhabitants of the city immediately before and after the blast, revealing the gruesome effects of the bomb on human bodies. The second depiction comes with the earlier mentioned anime adaptation of Barefoot Gen, the autobiographical account of the author's experience of the bomb and radiation. The art style for the show is quite unusual for such a genre, as it adopts a more cartoony approach. However, this adaptation brought a lot more to the table than the manga could offer, especially in its depiction of the results of radiation sickness, the horrible brutality of melting eyeballs, maggot-infested wounds, which might be a little too much for YouTube, coupled with sound and music, paints the terrifying reality of getting caught in the middle of the A-bomb. The movie also shows a clear difference between how nuclear weaponry is depicted in Japanese media versus other nations. The Western world uses the event as a tool for exaggeration and even used in a lot of comedy shows with mushroom clouds.
Quite a volatile concoction.
But the Japanese narrative focuses more on tragedy, remorse, and resilience, as they were the ones who bore the brutal reality. Let's skip a bit forward to the modern anime world and take a look at two more well-known anime that has references to atomic bombs. Akira and Neon Genesis Evangelion. Akira is probably the most prominent modern film directly related to the atomic bomb, which was made clear from the very first seconds of the film as the A-bomb was dropped on Tokyo in 1989. The rest of the show focused on the post-nuclear world of New Tokyo, plagued with protests, terrorism, and gang violence. While it premiered more than 40 years after World War II, but it still manages to capture the terrifying nature of nuclear warfare. Akira was also one of the very first anime films to air in Western nations on a large scale, laying down the path of the creation of weebs in the near future.
I have the power of God and anime on my side!
Although the main focus of the apocalyptic story is to warn against the creation and use of nuclear weapons, it was also a pivotal film in the cyberpunk genre. The Akira slide scene inspired many parodies in future anime. The second modern-day series is Neon Genesis Evangelion, a massive franchise originally aired from 1995. It is super popular with so many collaborations that you can live your life entirely off their merch, taking place in another post-apocalyptic world, though not destroyed by nukes, but rather by angels. The show featured many uses of nuclear weaponry. The main protagonist organization, NERF, is often compared to the Manhattan Project, creating weapons of mass destruction in an escalating arms race with the Angels. The series is just a wild ride, highly recommended. Of course, how can I talk about anime war films without mentioning Hayao Miyazaki's Grave of the Fireflies? The show depicted the tragedy of World War II by telling a story of two struggling siblings. However, it should be noted that it's not related to the nuclear bombs, but just regular bombing, based on another city of Kobe, a couple hundred kilometers off Hiroshima. Let's return to the real modern days of anime. Indeed, we can see more and more World War II influenced shows popping up. Girls on Panzer is an extremely popular show in Japan, featuring tanks and weapons from the WW2 era, though the combat might not be historically accurate. Another well-known franchise would be Kantai Collection, featuring World War II ships morphed into cute anime girls. As for the A-bomb, we begin to see more and more of the mushroom cloud being used as an exaggeration in anime nowadays. One example would be Attack on Titan, during a transformation of a certain titan. Another comedy example would be Konosuba. You can see mushroom clouds every time Arch-Wizard Megumin casts her massive explosion. All in all, while the political background of nuclear bombs still remains a sensitive topic, viewers can see more appearances of nukes among anime and manga. But to answer the question of whether there be an anime adaptation of Oppenheimer, probably the same time when No Game No Life Season 2 comes out. Thanks for watching.